Thanks for tuning in at Brackeys.
Hello everyone and welcome to this video in the How to Make a 2D Platformer course. Today we are going to be upgrading our upgrade menu. We are going to be centralizing our player stats in a separate script where we can have stuff like health, which we already have, and then a speed variable. You can also add stuff like weapon damage multipliers and everything in one place so that other components and other scripts can sync up to that, change the values and then get them back. And that's going to make it much easier for our upgrade menu to just connect to the player stats and handle everything there. So that's going to be super fun. Hopefully we're also going to be hooking it up to the UI so we can actually see some upgrading. And yeah, without further ado, let's just dig right into it. So you can see that I'm here in Unity, and the first thing that I want to do is find our player and double click on the player script itself. When we open this up in MonoDevelop, you'll notice that we of course have this stats class, and we also have an instance of that class. So let me just drag over the window here, and we can actually just delete the system.collections. Actually, we're going to be using that in a second, so let's not do that. However, you can see that we have this system.serializable, and this is a public class, and it's actually separate from the rest in the script. And this is what I want to use as a base for our new mono behavior that we're going to be adding. So let's copy that using Control X. Let's just cut it out, and let's delete this player stats reference. Let's save that, head back into Unity, and of course now we're going to get some errors because these stats no longer exist. And then we can go in here, not on the player, but on the game object, and here add the player stats. This way we are separating our player stats from the actual player game object so that we can remember what stats we have and what upgrades we have applied, even though our player dies and then respawns. So we can apply that back in. That's a much better way of doing it. So let's double click on this now, opening it up in MonoDevelop. And now we can simply copy the class from before in here and make sure to make this a mono behavior. We can remove the system.serializable, and we can change this from a public void init that we need to call from somewhere else and simply make this a void awake. So we can simply set that up in the awake method. So that was pretty easy. We can delete the system.collections there. And now we need a way for our player to reference this player stats. And just like we did with our game master, where we had this static variable that stored the instance of our player of our game master, we are going to do the same with our player stats. I'm just going to show you what it is I'm talking about. So if we go under our game master, you can see that we have this public static game master called GM, and this is the actual instance that lives in our scene, and we set that equal to our game master in the awake method. So we're going to be doing the same here with the player stats. It's a very simple design pattern that makes everything much easier. So let's do a public static player stats, and we can just go ahead and call this instance. And then we can make inside of the awake function, we can say if instance is equal to null. Well, then we want to set instance equal to this. And this, of course, refers to the player stats instance that the awake function is running on. Cool. And this way we can simply go into our player script and we can delete the stats.init. And then the stats here, every time it says that, we are going to replace that with player stats.instance. And if we want to optimize this, instead of using player stats.instance every time, we can cast this in a variable. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So up here, we can create a private player stats, and we're just going to call this player stats, or if we want to keep the same naming convention, we can just call it stats. And then in the start method, we set stats equal to player stats dot instance, and this way we have a reference to that stats object. So that's perfect, and we can just save everything and leave it in here, and we don't really need to do anything at all. And we can just head out into Unity, make sure we don't have any errors, which we don't. And you can see here now that the player stats is the one that has the ability to change this stuff. So the max health of our player is now controlled under the DM object under the player stats script. So if we hit play here, we should see that everything is currently working. And it seems that it is. You can see here, if I let this guy hit me, we actually lose health. So that's perfect. And I'm just going to go ahead and disable the my monitors here so that the audio won't be feeding through the mic. Great. So the next thing that we can do is add some kind of health regeneration, because if we want our player to level up his health, his max health, it would be great if we could actually utilize that the max health has changed. So let's just have the health go up over time. And this is a very easy thing to do. We simply head into our player script. We find the... Actually, we could do this inside of the update method, but instead let's create some kind of repeating invoke. So some kind of method that repeats itself at a fixed rate. And it's great to do it this way because we want health only to go up in discrete numbers. We have an integer, we only want it to go up with whole numbers. So we can say something like 2 times a second, we should add 1 to our health, for example. So let's first off go ahead and make a public float here, and this is going to be the health regen rate. But again, instead of having this inside of our player script, let's go ahead and decentralize or centralize this into our player stat script. So we can have a public float, and this is going to be the regen rate, and we can default that to 2. Perfect. And then we can go inside of our player, and then what we can do is we can make some kind of method here called regen health. And this is just going to regen 1 health each time it's called. So we can say that we want our stats dot health or current health to be plus equals and then 1. It's that simple. And then we need to, of course, update this on the status indicator. So you can see here, we need to call status indicator.set health using stats.current health and stats.max health. Great. And what we can then do is we can have the stat method invoke this. So under our stat method, we can use invoke repeating, and we can give the method name regen health. We can give it a time until it starts regenning, and that's just going to be the same as our repeat rate, so that it doesn't regen right when we spawn, but after the repeat rate it does. And we can simply use stats.regen rate, and maybe we should actually rename this to health regen rate, just to be more specific. And you can see it easily updates in here, and then we can use again stats.health regen rate for the amount of time that it should wait before repeating. So now this should actually be working, and we can try and hit play here. And of course we will need to lose some health. So let's wait for an enemy to appear. There is one, and wait for him to damage us, and you can see now that our health goes up, but it goes up only once every 2 seconds, and that's because we need to use 1 divided by our regen rate. Because right now our regen rate was specifying the amount of times that we needed to wait. We need to actually have the rate be 1 divided by that. So this is perfect, and now we can try this again and see if it's working. And now we should see it regenerate 2 times a second. And indeed it does. It might be a bit too small on your screen. I'm going to maximize this in a second so you can see that it's actually working, but trust me, it is. So that's perfect, and we can jump down and respawn here. And you will notice that when we respawn, we have an issue. And that's because when we respawn, our maximum health is still 0. And that's because when we, if in the update function here, if we jump down, we damage the player with a lot. And then you can see here that we check if our current health is less than or equal to 0, which is it then is, it would be exactly 0, well then we want to kill the player. But there's nowhere in here where we set our current health back to the maximum health. You can see here we have the kill player, and then under our, if I find our game manager or game master here, we have the kill player. There we go. It simply destroys the object and it goes into remaining lives and all this, but it doesn't actually reinitialize the stats. And we don't want it to. We only want it to go back to the maximum amount of health. Everything else that we have upgraded, such as our speed, we don't want that to be reset. So all we need to really do is inside of the player script here on the damage player, after we kill the player, so that needs to be up here in the start method. All we need to do here is simply say that stats.current health should be equal to stats.maximum health. Just to make sure, we do this inside of our player stats right at the beginning, right down here in the awake, but we actually don't need to do that. We can do it inside of our player method instead. So now when we try and hit play here, and we jump down, we should see that when we respawn, our health resets to the max health, and indeed it does. So that's perfect, and that's pretty much all we needed to do there. Now we can go ahead and maybe move our speed inside of this player stats as well. So if we take a look at our player, we have a platformer character 2D script, and this has a max speed. That is indeed our movement speed. So if we double click on this, we can go ahead and just remove this from in here. We don't want it there anymore. Then we can go under the player stats and add a new variable in here instead. And this is just going to be the public float, and we're going to call this movement speed and set it equal to the default 10 as it was in the other one. And then all we need to do is inside of our platformer character 2D script, find the place where we used the max speed, which was here, and then instead of max speed, write player stats dot instance and then dot movement speed. Cool, and now it will draw from that every time we need to move. There's of course ways to optimize this, but it's really not going to matter in most cases. So now let's try and hit play. You can see we can still move, and if I go into the GM object and dial this up, you can see we now move a lot quicker. So we have the opportunity to now upgrade that as well. And you can do this with any kind of variable in the game. For example, under the player, we have a pistol. You can do this with the fire rate and the weapon and the damage as well. However, if you want to change out the weapon, it doesn't make sense to directly take the stats from the player stats, because then it won't change depending on the weapon. So what you could do instead is have some kind of multiplier on the player stats here, just something like 1, 1.2, 1.3 that multiplies the damage and the fire rate for the given weapon. And you can simply implement that in the weapon by, instead of using the damage variable directly, use damage multiplied by player stats dot instance dot damage multiplier. And then you can upgrade that inside the menu. So that would be a great way to do that. I'm not going to show it here, but if it's something you want to see, also weapon switching and maybe buying other weapons, definitely leave that suggestion in the comment, and we might do it. So cool, that was it for moving everything inside of the player stats. Now we can go ahead and actually make this changeable or editable in the upgrade menu. So if we go under our UI overlay and find our upgrade menu, we need to create a script to handle this upgrade menu. And you can see that our hierarchy here or project panel is getting a bit cluttered. So let's go ahead and take our audio manager, drag it under the scripts, and do the same with our player stats and our money counter UI. Perfect. Then we can go ahead and find our upgrade menu again, hit add component, and now we want to add an upgrade menu. Cool, and we need to remember that this is only enabled whenever the whenever the game object is enabled, which means when we have the upgrade menu open on our screen. So that's perfect, we don't need to take care of that. So the first thing that I want to do is display our current health and our current speed. And in order to do that, we need a reference to the UI elements we have for displaying that. So I'm going to be using Unity Engine, unityengine.ui. And we want two serialized fields here. The first one is going to be a private text. And this is going to be our health, or maybe our health text. You could do something like current health text or whatever, but it's actually the max health. So yeah, just health text is fine for now. And excuse me, we don't want to default this to anything. We want to edit this inside the inspector. Okay, so we can simply duplicate that and use it down here, and this is going to be our speed text. And then what I want to do is I want to, okay, so there are multiple ways of doing this. One is to have some kind of method that updates the health text and the speed text, and then we call that method, let's say, whenever we open the upgrade menu, and then we call it whenever we press a button to upgrade something, because then it might change. Another way is simply to do it every frame. But let's actually do a bit of optimization here and do it the first way, the correct way, so to say, the best way at least. And that is to have a void which is going to update values, and this is going to set health text.text equal to player stats, and let's also actually do a reference to our player stats. So let's have a private, actually let's do that beneath our fields here, a private player stats, and we're just going to call that stats, and then inside of our void start we are going to set stats equal to player stats dot instance. Great. So health text dot text equals stats dot max health dot toString. Cool. And we can just do speed text dot text equals stats dot movement speed dot toString. Perfect, and that should basically be all we need to do, except we need to of course call this. So we want this to be called whenever this game object is enabled. That means whenever we bring up our upgrade menu. So void on enable, and we simply update the values there. Then we can also call it whenever we change something. So this should now load in the correct value. So let's try and hit play here. Oh, of course we need a reference to the two objects. So under our upgrade menu, under our attributes, under our health attribute, we have the health amount. Let's drag that in there. Under the speed attribute, we have the amount there, and that should be all. So let's try and hit play. And now we hit U, and this says 120 and that says 10. That's not correct. Object reference not set to instance of an object. So what's going on here? Let's double click this, and for some reason that isn't working. I think that maybe our stats are never set, which would be annoying. So what we'll do is instead we'll have this reference inside of the unenable. Let's try that. Okay, so hit U, and now it's working. So you can see it says 100 and it says 10. However, we of course wanted to say health 120 and speed 10. So we simply need to add on to this. So we'll go like this, health and speed. Good, and you can of course make this into some kind of variable. You can edit in the inspector, something like health prefix or whatever, but for now we're just going to hardcode that in. That's not super important, and you can see that these two values now update. So that's perfect. The next thing we need is some kind of way to upgrade this. So whenever we're dealing with UI buttons inside of Unity's GUI system, all we need to do is make some kind of publicly available function that they can call. So we simply need to say public void, and this is going to be upgrade health. And we'll call that from the button, and all this needs to do is edit the player stats in some kind of way. So we can say stats dot max health, and then times equals, and then some kind of multiplier. And I think that multiplier should either be available inside of the upgrade menu or inside of the player stat script. For now, we are just going to make this available in the upgrade menu itself. So what I want to do is have a serialized field here, because we're not going to be using it outside of the script, and make it private. And this is going to be a float, and it's going to be the health multiplier. That's not correct. Multiplier. I think that's correct. And we can make that something like 1.3. So every time that we upgrade our health, it's going to give it 30% more health than before. So stats.max health times equals health multiplier. And then we want to update values. Good. And that is not working. And the reason why it's not working is because this is an integer variable, and now it needs to convert that. So we say that this is equal to max health times health multiplier stats. And if we convert this to an integer, how do we need to go about this? 1 second. So we need some kind of way to tell it. I think this is correct. So let's just try this. Of course, we need to call this from the button, right? So we have the health upgrade button here, and you can see that we've already added an on-click event. So all we need to do here is simply take the upgrade menu there, drag it in there, go under function, upgrade menu, and find the upgrade health. So now when we hit play, and we hit U, and we hit upgrade, you can see that it upgrades to 129, and it rounds down there because that's just what integers do by default. So you can see here that we can now upgrade our health, and this will of course scale non-linearly because we are adding by a percentage. So that's just fine. And if we want, there are multiple ways to do this. We can add some fancy math. We can, instead of adding just 30% each time, we can have it go by some kind of polynomial function. And there are many ways to do this. But for now, this is going to work just fine. If you want to investigate this further, you can go on Google and search for something like stat scaling function or something like that, and check out the many different possibilities for how you want your stats to scale. Good. And we of course need to add the same here for our speed. So upgrade speed, and that's going to do the same, except now we're not talking about max health. Now we're talking about movement speed. We're doing that there, and we of course now need a movement speed multiplier. So speed multiplier. Let's do movement speed multiplier. And that's just going to be the same for us right now. You can tweak these numbers, and it's important you do to make the game the most fun as possible. And this is already in a float, so that's fine. Movement speed multiplied with movement speed multiplier, and that's going to be fine, and then it upgrades the values. And all we need to do is find our speed attribute, our upgrade button, and drag in our upgrade menu and find the function called upgrade speed. Perfect. So let's try and hit play here and press U, upgrade. Everything is working, and it's also updating inside of the game. So you can see here that our max health went up, and of course it needs to regenerate to that amount of health, but it is indeed working. And if I just upgrade our speed a bunch here, whoa, that went crazy. So it's clipping now because it's it's so crazy. Our speed multiplier is way too big here, and we also kind of need to truncate the numbers here. So let me just find the best way to truncate that number, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I think all we need to really do here is simply use math.round to round this off to an integer number. We could add some kind of amount of decimals, but I think this is going to be plenty for what we're doing. And I also want to maybe tweak our movement multiplier just a bit. So if we find our upgrade menu here, take our movement speed multiplier and change it to something like 1.1. So if we hit upgrade here and upgrade a few times, that's a bit too little. So let's do 1.2. See how that works. So this is fun. So we can quickly get moving very fast. So that's perfect, and everything should be working now. So the last thing that we really have to do on this upgrade menu is some kind of way to spend our money and to disable our ability to upgrade things when we don't have enough money. So that's going to be for the next video, since this is already very long. I hope you enjoyed this introduction on kind of how to shape an upgrade menu through code and how you can have player stats that other scripts have a reference to and just use, but not that are not spread out through the game. That's a lot less confusing. Good. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.